to market on.
There is one
very been complaining.
sellers.
Doctor would me again. Guys, we'll not go below the belt. The stack is called ABHA, right?
Yes, beautiful name.
Hi boys, welcome everyone to the second episode of the Synapse Pod. We are all here, ready to have a chit chat regarding big things. And today's topic, what we have decided, is going to be ONDC. First of all, can anyone tell me the full form of ONDC? That's a pop quiz before we deep dive into what we are talking about. Anyone wants to volunteer?
It is Open Network for Digital Commerce.
Perfect, Paras. You get all the brownie points.
1-on-1 so far.
So for the audience who don't know, we are talking about ONDC, which is Open Network for Digital Commerce. It is a brand new innovation from the Indian government, and we'll call it the innovation from the government because it's built like a stack, which is very similar to what UPI did for payments and GSTIN did for tax. So ONDC is supposed to do for commerce, right? And let's start in terms of what is the use case, why it was required, and why do we even have to talk about something like this, right? What do you think? Who wants to go first? Please. Why do you think that something like an open network for digital commerce was even required in the first place?
So basically, the thing is that a lot of small retailers and all for a very long time have been complaining about like the monopolistic behavior and the actions of Amazon and Flipkart, where they are able to analyze all the data of the sellers, and on the other end, they are able to collate all the data of the buyers, and they want to build the silo of the walled garden within which they can actually grow themselves and their brands and push their market, whereas pushing the small players away. So what government said after going through all this and all, so what government said, okay, so let's open it. What about making a network or a platform, basically an infra, where we can have the data of all the buyers, we can have data of all the sellers, and you can create any app and just plug in the data from this network, and you can let e-commerce happen. Like you can let the commerce happen. So that was the basic idea about this infra. In order to break the monopolistic nature of these giants, so that is what government want to achieve with this ONDC. I think it's a massive step, because we have seen what has happened in the payments, right? I mean, before UPI, proprietary solutions of Paytms and all were taking the country by storm, but suddenly infra came in for payments with zero transaction cost, easy to use, instant. These were the kind of things that enabled UPI and other companies to adapt. And now we know what's the history. I mean, globally, we haven't seen in any country something like UPI, and similar thing is what government wants to do with ONDC. So that's a basic understanding. As a buyer, you do not have to create accounts on different e-commerce platforms. You go to one app or you go to anything, you get the data of sellers, because that app is going to pull all the data of sellers and products from the same platform, from the same network, and it makes it easy. So that's my basic understanding. I mean, we can definitely add more things to it.
Before we deep dive into the components of ONDC, I would love to discuss why the need of it got arised in the first place. So I want to talk about predatory pricing and of these giants, and I'm sure every one of us have had instances where they have had to pay insane amount of predatory pricing of let's say these e-commerce giants who are trying to cut down prices with massive discounting for the local retailers, D2C brands, and how they have suffered because they're literally unable to match with respect to direct competition from the big giants from outside, whether that's Amazon and now Flipkart as well. So So the question is like, do you think if with the government's intervention into the whole commerce technology stack, will be able to curb deep discounting?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it can help that much in that regard that it can curb deep discounting, because see, the biggest feedback from all the normal retailers that has been so far is that entities like Appareo, which are practically sellers, partly owned by Amazon, and they are sellers on Amazon, get unfair treatment compared to other sellers. So that is the problem that all the retailers have. Now, apart, according to me, because I've been on the insides of it, I think part of the problem is that Appareo entities like Appareo come with a lot of financial muscle. They can negotiate the kind of prices with brands that a normal retailer cannot. So I think even if a fair marketplace is created, will it really solve the problem of deep discounting? I'm not too sure about it. The place where I see a lot of value being added by ONDC sometime soon, like when it rolls out properly, is that it will become easier to make a user facing e-commerce marketplace for everyone. And essentially, when this creation of marketplace gets democratized, a lot of fair practices already come into place. For example, if it was not easy to make a payment app with UPI, probably the biggest one or two players would be charging you on every transaction right now. But because it is so easy to make a user facing payment app, essentially anyone can launch a payment app with zero transaction charges, which practically becomes the norm because everyone can do it. So it becomes, the rules become very much fair by the end of it if the user facing creation is for a business is democratized. So I think ONDC is going to do that Amazon and Flipkart can't take away the whole market. If a retailer doesn't want to be on Amazon or Flipkart, do they have another choice to go to another platform? Now imagine 10 platforms coexisting together because ONDC came into place. Suddenly everyone's practices become much more fair because everyone now suddenly wants to attract the retailers. Yeah. So this is what the biggest value probably ONDC can add. With respect to discounting, I think financial muscle will again come into the picture. Whoever sources the most from the brands in bulk gets the lowest price, which becomes practically the reason someone gets a buy box or gets the top visibility as a seller.
I want to add something to that. Let's first talk about the utility or the value that an e-commerce company bring to the table. Before talking about cutting them off, let's see what they bring on the table. They bring on a lot of traffic for the listings of different retailers. So you can never, I would say, discount that fact that that's not a big value that they bring, right? So will that open network when anybody put up a request and it will start popping out from different sellers, will that solve the problem? Because I have experienced India Mart, right? It's supposed to be an open platform in a way that when I put up a request for buying something, I get a lot of requests, and it's not a very convenient platform for that say. So I have my doubts that straight away cutting them off is the solution. And second point, that would like to also understand that why and how Amazon has worked decently fine in a country like US. Is it something which like they didn't want to support the local sellers, or like local sellers change their business model? Yeah, there are just too many questions in our mind right now than answers, to be honest.
With respect to international perspective, I have something in mind. I think there are three kinds of models in this kind of a play which has prevailed across. One is, of course, the US-driven model, which is a completely consumer-driven economy in terms of like the market will rule and the market will tell you what is the right and what is the right thing to do, right? The second is a Chinese model, which is mainly by which essentially has a great firewall to breed domestic champions like Alibaba or ByteDance. That is the second kind of a model. And the third kind of model is more like a European driven model, which has insane amount of regulation, where regulation forms the primary point across which their whole commerce is driven. So this thing so India is actually taking a very different hybrid approach in terms of ONDC, and that is how I would try to compare these three parallels. and see where. So I somehow feel we are trying to fit between the India model, between the US model and the Chinese model somehow. So even if you look at your screen right now, as we have shared an image, this is how exactly it'll work. The users will search for a product or a service on the buyer's app. Then there would be a central gateway which would broadcast that information to all the sellers, and interested sellers would then respond by trying to outbid each other for that order, right? The gateway would then push the response to the buyer, and then the buyer will place an order. But the real game happens of transportation after the buyer has placed the order, where a seller would search for, when the logistic parties would come in, a seller would search for the logistics, that which one do they want to utilize. The gateway would again broadcast it to all the logistic partners, and that is how it will carry forward before a logistic partner chooses to take that order and then delivers it. So that is the total model. And I see a lot of drawbacks into this. For example, in UPI, you saw that there were only three stakeholders, right? Here you see there are so many stakeholders. There is the buyer, there is the cataloging partner, then there is the logistics partner, there is the seller. There are all these there are all these stakeholders. However, in UPI there were only three stakeholders. One was the sender's bank, the receiver's bank, and the app. Right? If let's say a seller sends a stone instead of a mobile phone as an order, just hypothetically speaking, how would you track that the source of the issue in the whole order flow, and who will be liable for this? Or
I
if
think
there
that's
is a
still
mistake in
trackable.
the cataloging, right? How would you essentially track down in the whole order flow and find the issue with so many stakeholders existing? So I see this being a challenge.
I personally have a different opinion on the stakeholder piece because at the end of the day, there will be a complete mapping of who shipped the order, eventually who was who was the source supplier, who was the end person who delivered, which was the payment gateway. So all those tracking will 100% be there. I kind of second on what Paras said. I think the intent here is to give a fair platform for the sellers where they can have an option apart from major two e-commerce players, that in case they feel that there's some kind of practices which are not helping them or is kind of against them in promoting their product, then there can be an easy mechanism where a third marketplace or a fourth marketplace can come up which might give them a fair practice. So the objective here is that at the end, because everyone will go towards a healthier practice system, right? At the end, what this system is providing is a backend, right? It is kind of creating an order management system or a supply chain management system, so that it becomes very easy to build a e-commerce marketplace platform on top of this existing ecosystem, right? Something what exactly UPI solved, right? At the end of the day, a PhonePe or a Paytm or a Beam UPI just build their own UPI, but the entire backend system was there. Similarly, over here also, multiple marketplaces, whichever tech companies think they have the capability to build the front end, they can come and build their front end and use the entire backend stack for it. However, key critical areas and how it helps is like, let's say Amazon today says that I am going to promote only products of X seller, and their search results are tweaked in such a way that you're only going to see the first 10 results from the X seller. Then the YZ seller have an option to kind of, leave their platform, go to another marketplace and push their products there. But one key interesting point is, unlike UPI, where user UX is not that important, primarily you're just scanning a QR code and paying out, right? In this particular model, where there are too many steps till the end transaction on the front end, right? Whoever is building the front end has to build a lot of things, which includes search, which is not an easy thing to build, a product display page, adding a lot of trust. How do you solve for customer trust on a particular product, right? Reviews, ratings. Now, these are not things probably there can be that platforms will be willing to exchange. For example, if I purchase a product from Amazon, I see all the reviews of the customers, right? That is implicit data of that particular product owned by Amazon. Amazon might not be willing to share it with, let's say, a Flipkart or an XYZ new marketplace. So anyone who owns the demand primarily also owns the data of the users. That is not something that is going to get interoperable, right? On the forefront, you might see that there's a common architecture on which I can come and build, but there's already a lot of advantage with existing e-commerce players have in terms of both designing the user journeys that will help in the transaction funnel, building those recommendation engines as a user. What is the product that Saransh would like to buy, right? So those kind of engines, like today, if we were to even go, very high intent products are the only ones to which we go and search. Otherwise, for casual buying, like let's say for an apparel kind of a product, we'll just search and then we'll just browse. That ability to kind of browse and buy is something that sets apart. At the end of the day, if every platform is going to own their own search and listing algorithms, right, they will still be controlling which seller to show. So creating a separate marketplace and moving demand towards it, creating an ecosystem of user experience around it, it's a different ball game altogether. So I'm not sure how much we can replicate the UPI experience to this. It is a different ball game altogether, right? It has a lot of other friction points as well.
Just to put two things into perspective, Saransh, around that what you just said, right? One is a fair marketplace. Now, I'm not trying to be the devil's advocate here, but if you're saying a fair marketplace, right? In UPI also 65% of the payments happen through either Google Pay or Phone Pay. So there is monopolization there, first point. And the second point is, when a central player like Google Pay or Phone Pay would fuck up, our recourse to go is to the government, right? Now here with the ONDC stack, when the government fucks up, where is the recourse? That is exactly why I try to put the point where there are so many stakeholders who will be the central authority who will do stakeholder management. When there is a faulty order, would every single faulty order go to a consumer court? Would there be a continuous API which would direct to court cases? And if yes, would I have to wait 2 years to take a refund? Those are all the loopholes that I feel.
If a transaction via phone pay fails, right, it's phone pay's responsibility to kind of address the issue. The government doesn't come into picture. Similarly, if tomorrow there are 20 applications built on ONDC backend stack, wherever you place the order is where you're going to get in touch with. Now, how do they set up their back channels to identify who was the seller and who kind of made the delivery is something they can figure out. The Amazon has to figure out.
Yeah, Manik, you were saying something.
Yeah, man. Before I start on I have 3 different ideas to share here because I've just been on the listening end of everything that's been happening. First, remember essentially whatever happens, right? Like imagine from UPI. Imagine what is a government supposed to do, or what is the government's main responsibilities are. The main responsibility is to provide and regulate money in the country. That is to provide fair trade. And the other main responsibility is to provide defenses or make sure there is law and order in the ecosystem. Those were the 2 things where essentially the kingdoms started, and from there other things started. It was a fair economy where markets were being built, and the governments used to have people who would make sure that things were always in order and structure. What Amazon and Flipkart did and what got government scared was they started to create a monopoly, which everyone has said. It created a monopoly. They were charging 30%, 40% commissions, different items, and they were essentially being able to control the revenue stream which the government could easily look at, but now can't really look at. But with the whole data pipeline, the government wanted to either build new things. And what Chirag rightly pointed out, right? Like I think Saransh was the first one to bring out trust. I think trust in the ecosystem can vary so much. If you look at US as economy, US is a trust-based economy. India is a trust deficit economy. We inherently don't trust anyone. And that's the reason the kind of products that we buy and the utility we have for each product, because we just don't trust it. So when you don't trust things, you will automatically think the reason why our e-commerce penetration is still low is because Amazon and Flipkart has spent years and years of marketing dollar to create that trust. The reason why Paytm was so low was the amount of money which has been sent to create trust is so high that people can now associate payments with Paytm, Phone Pay, Google Pay, essentially everything. But even then, when UPI came in, it needed a front-end player. So I think whenever what happens, right, is that when you look at the whole trust ecosystem that I'm talking about, it's easier to come in and say there's a base layer which the government is building. So essentially you're you're decentralizing powers of some. So it's a sort of a legislation where, with UPI also, government wasn't like, hey, this is my app, use it for payments. If that was the case, there won't exist a Phone Pay or a Google Pay. They will, to answer Chirag's point, they will not come here and say, hey, this is the e-commerce which can be used. They will only open the backend for players to come in. So what this will do is either the old players are nimble enough to kind of use those platforms or the backend layer. Otherwise, there will be new monopolies being created. Monopolies will still be created. There will be tech product on top of it. It's just going to happen in a different format. In a format which government likes and not the way which we would want or the Amazon or Flipkart should want. Essentially, the easiest way to win a new game is to change the rules of the previous game.
So just a quick question, like just wanted your opinion on it. Do you guys see a third major player coming in utilizing this tech stack and being able to compete with Flipkart or Amazon anytime in, let's say, 1 year from the launch of ONDC?
Oh no, I think there are two which are absolutely huge right now. We are forgetting that Tata's acquired Big Basket. They're acquiring, essentially look at the culmination of brands which Tata is doing and look at the culmination of brands which Jio is doing under them, the Jio stores. Jio stores can empower so many things and Tatas can empower so many things. So it's a gateway for the older guys to come into. That's where I think ONDC will be, crazy, is where the other, like the older players in the market which haven't had a say till now will have a chance to do
But
so.
I have a very interesting take in this. So one thing is that, okay, a new player can come in. But if we see what government is trying to do is basically they want to get all the local retailers like who are offline, they want to give a tech stack to them so that they can sell online, right? So if you know that the e-commerce penetration in India is like in early single digits, if government brings everyone on online, like all the local kirana stores and all the local retailers and all, then actually it becomes easy for Amazon to tap into that audience which is not able to reach out, right? So if they want, Amazon and Flipkart can actually increase their market share with a lower CAC by tapping into this audience of retailers who government is bringing on board. That is why Amazon and Flipkart are very readily signing up for ONDC and not forcing
They're
it.
opted in already.
Correct,
Yeah.
because they're getting a standardized seller base. They don't have to train them. They don't have to do anything else, and that is actually going to increase their power, increase their reach.
And it's all about the customer acquisition, I believe, because the customer acquisition will still be the major problem for every front-facing app, even if the backend support is there by this open tech stack. This CAC will be the major part, and that will be definitely be something which these major players have already figured out. So when it's about level playing field between online and offline, it depends a lot on the search algorithm per se.
Search algorithm comes once you are on the platform. See, when you are talking about CAC, I'll give you a very clear picture, which I'm very certain it will happen. The future is Club Factory. Have you shopped on Club Factory? All of you have,
It
right?
has zero commission, I guess.
It had zero commissions. First of all, commissions are going out of the window very soon.
Misha does, right?
The monetization was through ads, which is how do you come on top? The search becomes the monetization. Right now, also more than 90% of the commerce on major marketplaces happens through search. That's where the journey begins on any platform, right? So you tap onto that. That becomes the biggest monetization channel. Because I have a little more context on this, right now, less than 500 rupee, all listings on Amazon and Flipkart are 0% commission already before ONDC. That has happened. So nothing stops it from going to, and that essentially happened because Meesho came in. So nothing essentially stops for it all to become a 0% commission model. And the monetization shifting somewhere else, where Avinash is saying, how will the users come on the platform? So the thing is, if a platform invests on getting 1 million users on the platform, there are retailers sitting to bid to be in front of those million retailers suddenly. Like if you read what has happened in the West, Amazon's, even in India, I think, I'm not very sure about it, Amazon's revenue from marketing has increased or surpassed their spends on marketing to get customers into the ecosystem.
It's the top 3 revenue channel.
It's the top 3 revenue channel. So I see that happening, that advertising and search become the biggest monetization models because it's so easy to make a user facing front. The commissions go out of the window because there is no sense anymore. Logistics and everything will become just fair, like cost plus pricing types, because everyone can participate in it suddenly.
Paras, don't you think so? It would essentially kill the ideology what will happen is I see micro hub distributors being formed where all, let's say, 50 Kirana stores don't know the fuck how to market on the new ONDC app. They cannot run ads because they have no idea how to. A micro distributor comes in disguised as a online enabler for these for these Kirana stores. He gets all those 50 together, takes a cut on every product sold, and then runs ads. So essentially, suddenly what happened is it became disguised. Instead of the platform taking it, a micro distributor who's coordinating this local commerce on that online platform starts to take a cut. Exactly the kind of model which happened with online distributors.
So there's no online
What
platform.
doing the ad becomes easy.
Yeah.
Exactly, and and now you get it, right? That there's no central, like there's the idea is that no Google Pay should form where a single entity is focusing so much on UI UX.
I don't think that is the problem. The agenda here is fair practice, like you said, that if any seller feels discriminated, they have other options to move on to. The game for the end customer, right? As a user of an e-commerce, I am already spoiled by how the UI looks like, how I make my decisions on how the products are shown to me, where do I see the reviews, etc. So UI design will play a very important role. And I think what it's solving is one, the common supply onboarding one, right? What Ayush was saying, which is getting those local players who were not able to, who did not have knowledge to get onboarded online. Now they have one common platform where they list their products, SKUs themselves, and they get listed on all e-commerce who are consuming those APIs. That's one. But one challenge might be that different companies have been building a lot of products on their onboarding product itself, where the supplier onboards, basis which they decide which product to show up, which to show right in the start, the cold start problem itself before it starts showing any demand, right? But anyhow, it solves the purpose for this. Second is, I was reading that of these tribal products, right? The products of very specific nature. There was already a platform for it, and they are getting this platform also to get integrated. So now you will have access to products that were literally created by tribals, right? Jute products, or for example, Ranchi, I know it runs a particular initiative where they empower the tribals to create some product. Now suddenly those products have visibility online, which probably customers like us did not even know existed or did not even know were such authentic good products, and now we can have their visibility across, right? So that problem it definitely solves, right?
So Saransh, all I'm saying is if the government does not put anti-monopolistic measures on its platforms like UPI or so the government has already done that, and I was just reading somewhere that in January of 2021, right, the government came up with that no single entity can do more than 30% of transactions on UPI. Now that is an anti-monopolistic measure, right? Unless it does something like that on commerce, I do not see a future in which I cannot predict it that monopolies will not form.
And not a lot of people are agreeing to that policy of like limiting anything to 30%, because then it doesn't give any incentive to Google Pay to improve whatever they are doing, right? First of all, they already have 45% of the market share. First, they have to degrow themselves.
Or split into multiple entities and try to play the legal loopholes.
Guys, shed some light on one more thing. I had a question. Imagine the scenario where so many e-commerce players came into play. They raised humongous amount of funds. They built the market. They built their target audience. And now when they started, just moving towards probably profitability through these different revenue streams, government does something because of which they have to restructure, and the journey to profitability, suddenly the timeline increases again, right? So imagine for a Flipkart who's planning to probably go an IPO, and now because of these new things coming in, if they have to drop their commission per sale, suddenly they have to now find a new revenue stream altogether of ads, which was probably not so much money was pumped into the ecosystem with the vision of how things would be done, but some common player comes and changes it, right? So what happens to that? Just an open question. What happens to such players who have raised so much money and were just about to kind of utilize their benefits that they have achieved over last years? What happens to them?
And the sad part is that because when these people have to shift to the ad model, it is detrimental to the consumer. Ads itself is detrimental to the consumer because then you're killing the natural flow of the best products right into the top.
Yeah, maybe they will not shift to ad. So we have actually seen this. So Make My Trip is one of the example that Saransh is talking about. So Make My Trip used to take cuts from flights, all the flights they used to book, right? So somewhere around 2002, 2003, when they were actually preparing for their IPO, suddenly all the airlines said that, okay, we are not going to give anything to make my trip. We are not going to give anything to aggregator. Suddenly, a company like Make My Trip, who was earning so much from these commissions, they had to reinvent everything, their model, because otherwise they'll die, and they would have like died or perished, right? So yeah, I mean it's a very relevant question that Sanansh has, and ad is one way to generate revenue. There can be other ways, like they started having that conveyance charge. So the conveyance charge that we see in our tickets now, airline tickets now, was something that was decided after that.
I just hope it doesn't go to the same thing where fintech went, that every company is a lending company. I just hope that does not happen.
Zomato and Swiggy are taking delivery charges now, which they were not taking earlier.
They're able to take that now. Agreed. Interesting perspective. That makes me think that maybe a parallel of ONDC already exists in airlines. Of course, there are lesser number of brands, lesser number of retailers. But yeah, I mean, the pricing is practically same across all platforms. So the user, I just get a little curious about that. The success of platform depends where the user chooses to go. So if there is a fair play, like fair stage for everyone to list, so of course price becomes one reason where someone goes. If that happens, then everyone is on the lowest price. Not everyone is on the highest price, clearly. So everyone is on the lowest price. Now how does a user decide where to go?
I believe that this is a classic debate of communism versus capitalism, to be honest. And I believe that communism, when you are talking about some central entity taking responsibility of ensuring a fair market, it's not natural in its own way. It doesn't happen in the nature in per se. So why should it happen in among us? And I don't think it's sustenance, because I don't have an incentive to grow then, right? So
Not really, yaar. Tell me one thing, why should a UPI payment be charged ever if it's just a data entry at the end of the day? It is, I think, absolutely fair that UPI transactions are zero cost, because the effort involved to clock that transaction is very minimal. I mean, when I say zero, I mean practically zero. Right. So I think the core, if there is no input of cost, why should it be charged so much? And revenues and profits are anyway created more creatively than just applying a transaction charge or something like that. So
a couple of things quickly here. One, obviously there are a lot of transactions that API calls, whatever, like tech stack that is hosted on the servers of these companies or on the banks. So they are incurring definitely some cost to support the system, which they are not able to recover right now via UPI. So at least that has to come in at some time. Government's initiative currently on UPI has been that how can we digitize India faster. Eventually, yes, I think it will. There will be some commission that they'll allow. And similarly, I think would happen for e-commerce as well. Initially, for competition, because of competition, they might go zero commission, but or reduce the commissions. But eventually, it will start coming in. But I second your point on Paras, the part that eventually the person who owns the front end will hold the demand, because let's say if tomorrow video commerce becomes a big thing in India, right? And I create a product where you can the Indian market matures for it, wherein while video commerce itself I can buy. So I will not hop onto another product to just shop that product if I can see that getting tagged in that very platform. So eventually the platform that performs the best features or gives the easiest, most convenient way of shopping wins in that sense then.
Or where does my trust lie? I mean, practically Paytm, PhonePe, GPay are very similar products. Yet everyone has a preferred channel to pay for some reason. Like it does happen, right? So I think trust brand. Sorry?
Does anyone predict Paytm Mall making a comeback?
It's going to be tough, man. It's going to take a revival of crazy sorts. It needs a revival of what Satya Nadella did at Microsoft. Even that was also pretty damn nice. So it needs I think it needs to change its overall operational leaders. I'm not sure who they are currently, so I'm actually not in a good shape to say this, but I think it needs like a whole revamp.
Yeah, and recently what I read is their valuation dropped to $13 million from $3 billion.
But do you guys have any idea what happened actually?
Paytm Mall was practically shut since like a long time. It was not even existing as a business.
Yeah, I think people have seen that now in financials, like, and financials have exited, and they have exited the stake and all. So I think that's why it's coming in news now.
Yeah, it's been a done dusted business since a long time, and I talking about who can emerge from this. I think it's the moment of Snapdeal to make a comeback now. They've been holding around for so long, running it profitably, practically profitably. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but this is their moment. I think these founders make a comeback.
Meesho too is very well positioned for this new model. I'll be very excited to see what they do, how they are, because they have already tapped into tier 2. Let's see how they perform as well.
Yeah, I have an interesting question. Who do you think this same model of common tech stack is gonna eat up next? Is it gonna be education?
Health care.
Healthcare. Yeah, I also bet for ABHA. The stack is called ABHA, right?
Yes, beautiful name.
Yeah, what is it? What's the full form? I don't remember the full form.
Ayushman Bharat healthcare app, I guess.
Healthcare, there's a separate use case altogether that needs to be solved. Like, for example, there is right now no interoperability. Health is one thing that I need to understand. If Saransh has X problem, I need to pass it across platforms so that any doctor I go to via any platform knows what my history of medical record has been, which is there in US or any other developed country.
Actually,
This as a solution only didn't exist in India till now.
Actually, in US also interoperability is not existence. The company like Innovators came into picture because of that.
The simplest use case is I hop from app A to app B to buy the same medicine. I have to go through an online prescription again. And the doctor would bloody call me again. And these guys put it on IVR and they keep on calling me. Which is so crazy. Like, that should not be there. And you know what? Like, there's a book that I read called Total Recall. Back in 2014-15, which mentioned that Microsoft actually tried to do that in the States, where they tried to digitize, create a platform where any kind of digital healthcare records could be put, and that platform would essentially work like a management system for all hospitals, where every hospital would put in their data. It's just that the hospitals were not, after a certain point of time, incentivized enough to put that data because they feared that their customer data would leak and go to other people. And we're talking about the time when cloud computing was still new, back in 2011 to 12 era, where people were still talking a lot about big data, jQuery, and everything. So,
Coming back to that main topic, I would like to know what do you think will be the biggest challenge for ONDC?
I think Chirag pointed out very nicely, like dispute resolution is going to be a big ass thing because it just gets uglier from here because Amazon has got up. So I was trying to visualize it. So I'm thinking someone orders on the Flipkart app, the seller is using Amazon dashboard, logistic is being done by Snapdeal's delivery system, and the last mile is done by Dunzo. Now, of course, there is a tech stack in place. Of course, tracking can happen. But when dispute resolution happens, that stakeholders are brought on the table, right? So, this kind of religious coordination between each other might just get tricky because here physical goods are moving. It's not just a data entry which is moving from one bank account to another. It's a little more than that. Physical product gets involved. And of course, the accountability goes to the app first where the user transacted or user bought from, but then resolutions might take longer time than usual. I see that as a probable challenge, but there is a beauty in it also. Like,
and just imagine, India is such a cost-sensitive country. People would die and fight for 100 rupees refund. Imagine the kind of fiasco it will happen if the correct person who is responsible for the fuck up during the whole process is not held liable.
no, but plus at the same time, see, right now the customer journey, which is Amazon bought, Amazon fulfilled, and then Amazon customer raises a dispute and says, I got a soap instead of a smartphone. Okay, now there is Amazon who has to decide whether they want to lose this customer or not. Whoever has fucked up, there is one person who can take the charge and say, okay, this customer is important to me, I don't want to lose it, let me just refund it to them. Imagine an ONDC case. does Flipkart think, why would Flipkart pay for a fuck up by a seller who was actually fulfilling it from Amazon's dashboard? And fulfillment was done by a Snapdeal delivery guy. Like, who takes the charge here to compensate? Most probably Flipkart would, because the customer went through them, but I don't know. Manik, you were saying something, sorry.
I mean, I had just one line to say. I've been trying to say it for a while now. It was just that how do we establish trust? I think you've just been beating around that for a long time. Different use cases for it. It could be at 4 different places. It could be at logistics. It could be at reverse logistics. We didn't even come to reverse logistics of how that's going to be managed, customer support, everything else that comes along with that. And how do you inculcate trust in the ecosystem? If they can solve for that, I think everything else gets solved for. That is what will make ONDC the biggest thing.
Boils down to that, if 1 out of every 5 UPI transactions failed, it would not work. So the trust has to work like that.
Guys, we'll not go below the belt. Before we go any more below the belt for our payment apps, we will change the topic.
Let's switch gears.
Right? So the next topic, guys, and we'll keep it candid. And this actually will be a much longer discussion on this topic, and we can actually have this in 2 parts. The topic that I wanted to bring up for all you esteemed gentlemen was, how do we, in today's time and age, where all markets are so volatile, and whether that's crypto or private equity or stocks or public markets, when everything is so volatile, how do new entrepreneurs, right, who are just coming up in this era, find opportunity and choose their sectors of innovation? If you were to build, right, and I want everyone to just put themselves in the shoes, that if you were to start a new venture today and build something from scratch, how would you go about it? What would be your initial first thoughts? What would you look at? What kind of markets will you focus on? Will you think about profit first? Will you think about growth first? How would you approach this multivariate problem?
Yeah, I want to start first on this. See, from the very beginning, I used to think a strategy of following the money. Just think where the money is, and you will find problems, and you can find and make businesses. But over a period of time, I think that's not the situation. I think passion is something which has been talked a lot about and been shared by everyone, but I have felt that personally in my life. Because unless you have that passion, you don't wake up every day and work on it. But how do you identify that passion is something from your own behaviors, from your own journey. What is that thing that you hate the most, right? Or the thing that you are really have irritation about, right? That's how that's one way to identify your passion. Other ways are also there, but I personally believe that it is the first and foremost ingredient for any successful business that you want to create, at whatever stage, at whatever scale. It doesn't matter. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about, that is important for any successful business to be.
I take a very different view than I agree with Avinash, but I think passion is so overabused that for the longest time I had no idea what my passion looked like or what my passion is. So if I have zero idea what my passion is, what will I do? Will I continue to just explore things to figure out my passion? I don't think so. At least that wouldn't work for me. So I will give you what I would do if I was in today's shoe, right? Like, even to figure out different things, it is how many experiments and trials and errors you can do. And how do I mean by trials and errors? In which format? I think if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're a college student, or if you're someone who just wants to start and has zero experience in anything, because if you have experience in something, you have already noticed the problems in a particular field. If you have zero experiences in anything, right, the first ideal step is to take out a notepad and write 10 problems that you see every day. Essentially figure out different problems to solve for, and then keep writing different problems that exist. By the time you reach, say, 50th problem, and you've seen this problem with n number of people, is when you start thinking of a solution to come to be. I don't think so you should start from a sector or where the money flows. Think of a problem, and then think if the problem is big enough for it to be solved. For an example, if the water does not come in a particular area where I live, Is it just a locality problem, or is it the whole city problem, or is it a country problem, or is it a worldwide problem? Essentially, look at from a very micro lenses, because micro lenses is what you can track. I don't believe you can track macro lenses ever. So look at from a micro perspective. How many people's problems it is? Can I do anything about it? Essentially, each and every time you go about this asking these questions is something where you will realize, oh, I care about this problem a little more than I care about this problem. Oh, I care about education a little more than I care about blockchain or metaverse. Hey, I care about solving for healthcare. I care about solving for sports. It could be anything in the world which you care about, and it's a problem that exists with a large number of people. So I don't think so anyone should ever look for an area to solve for. Essentially, one should just have a habit of figuring out where the problems lie. That's how I would start. If I had to go back as a 21-year-old Manik to start anything, I would just be like, hey man, just keep noting down different problems and don't start on anything. Just work on a problem for a week and see if you have the luxury of time. If you don't have a luxury of time, then we will think of different ways.
I think I very well summarized, Manik. I think I second that. Kind of creating a list of multiple problems and then choosing the right problem which you feel connected and you feel it's a broader problem that you would want to solve for a longer duration as well. Like, not something that you want to just solve for next 1 year or 2 year. Apart from that, I think a couple of other factors that you should consider while finalizing on that problem is that, is the ecosystem for it already there? Like, can you build on it? Like, not everyone is going to be an Elon Musk who picks up a, legendary idea and just decides to build the entire ecosystem for it as well from scratch. It's extremely tough thing to do, right? So you pick up a problem which you connect with, then you see does the basic infrastructure or the ecosystem to kind of build this exists or not. Someone who's starting for the first time, right? I think that is one thing that you should look at. Thirdly, kind of timing. We have seen a lot of products that were kind of ahead of market and failed, and today some other company would probably be solving that exact same problem and it's now working out. So when are you building? How ecosystem for it, is it ready or not? How big is the market? Obviously, right? You have to look at the TAM. What is the market of that problem? And yes, is there anyone else who is kind of already solving for it? If so, what is the way in which they are solving, and how could you probably be solving it a little different? And that difference could be in the execution style. That difference could be in solving it in a different method altogether, or providing a different kind of a mode or a different value proposition altogether.
I think the world is won by the disruptors. Throughout the history, we have seen so many paradigm shifts, like oil economy converting to a Web2 economy, Web2 economy converting to a Web3 economy. So real estate was there; it was a big business. Then suddenly, a company like WeWork comes. It like breaks down into a different form altogether and brings in the co-working space as a business. Similarly, taxi business was already there. By improving the user experience, Uber actually disrupted the market. So you can actually, this can be a cheat code as well. Like if you are actually finding different industries to work on, find the industries which are like, we can say boomer industries, which have disrupted in the previous era, but are not disrupting now. And you can actually improve the user experience of that particular industry, of that particular product, and actually because the demand is there, the ecosystem is there. As Saransh and Manik said, the ecosystem is there. You can actually innovate on the user experience, innovate on the value prop that you bring to the user for this era by actually building the business around that. So because you won't have to chase for the demand. Even what Elon Musk is doing is actually he has been disrupting transportation. If you see, I mean, all his companies are actually a transportation company from point A to point B. Be it Tesla, be it SpaceX, be it Boring Company. So now he is diversifying into all the other different things, but he has been innovating in that particular industry where he has mastered, before PayPal. PayPal was also actually moving money from A to B. I mean, if we think about moving things from A to B, he has been doing that all this while. So, and he's been doing it in an interesting way, where he's bringing the efficiency, he's improving the user experience, he's building products that people love, he's creating value that in turn creates more industries in the coming future, going to create more industry in the coming future. So actually you can look into all the industries that are around you, which are non-sexy right now because nobody is paying attention to that, but it's a big industry. and see if you can actually disrupt that.
So if it was my take, I was very young when I read this, and I still hold that to be very true. Real margins always lie in luxury. So if I were to create a new business right now, I would essentially look at three factors: highest ARPU, lowest CAC, and highest net margins.
Can you explain those terms?
Yeah, so sure. So ARPU is average revenue per user. I would go for commodities or experiences or services which are sold for a very high premium, exclusive. With now the TAM essentially is, and I believe I definitely believe in the roadster strategy which Tesla took, that build for the richest, and then as economies of scale hit, it goes down to the masses. So I would take that route. I would go for the highest selling, the highest priced commodity with a massive net margin, and build whether it's a product or a service, and lowest CAC, where the product or the service itself is so defining, or such a 0 to 1 journey which is so disruptive that you don't need marketing to sell it, but it just gets sold by word of mouth. That is the take that is the approach I would take, because then suddenly you have less number of customers to deal with, and you can give the best quality of service to them.
Yeah, so okay, I have been in a different zone lately. So the answer might be a little twisted. I think might come from a bias that my survival is sorted, so I can think beyond. Maybe it's different for someone who's sorting out survival, but let us assume that for the person who's starting, survival is not that big of a problem. In that case, the mental model I would follow, if I could go back in time, was answer this question that future belongs to the one who dash. Like fill this dash, try to fill this dash. Who does the future belong to? Let's say, for example, future belongs to the one who solves for interplanetary travel. Let's say. Now you can look at this industry. Do I want to work in this industry? Who is working in this industry? Is it open enough? Are there too many competitors? No, will this be financially viable? So then you put your lens to it. I think people put a lens before this. I think they should put after this. So if let's say I know that a lot of people obsess about their interiors at their house, let's say. So I say future belongs to the one who solves for people who want a different interior design every month. Now you look at this thing. Is this going to work? Does the future really belong to the one who solves for this? So my approach has been more like solve for X, will the future belong to this person or not? So that's my mental model that I personally follow, and I think people can follow.
But you'll have to be absolutely right about timing in that.
I mean, you can't be way too futuristic, agreed, but you have to be before time. You can't time this. It's like you have to be before time and then wait it out. But ensure that the wait is not way too long. But I think it's fair to wait for a few years, because then it is then only when the time comes right, you are prepared to capitalize it. Can't just be jump at the time.
Actually, adding to Paras' points, I also have a mental model now created over a period of time, which is do not follow what people tell you. Like everyone says, listen to your customers. I don't believe so. I believe observe your customers, in which you kind of see if you provide this, will they feel cool? Will they feel proud? Will they feel happy? Will they feel talking about it to someone else? So instead of listening to what they want, just observe by giving them something or by giving them some kind of makeshift way. So yeah, this is the mental model which I follow to ideate on things that we need.
I agree. I think that's nice, Avinash. I think that's where I also started with. Listening to problems is what I was looking at. It's essentially the conversations which most people have. Or how do you look at it from that perspective? When you are doing something, right, like sometimes we get excited about problems, and it's very easy to get excited about problems. So I'm just going to take a tangent and say, okay, I have three different things which I'm extremely excited about. Something like, it could be, and it could be anything in the world. Just for the standpoint of this conversation, I will say healthcare and education. I'm excited about healthcare also, and I'm excited about education also. That is when you should work in that field for a couple of weeks. Look at all different parameters or the people you have to inspect the elements, right? Like, it's essentially work with all different people. Once you have that, is when you should realize, do I actually want to work in this field for longer? Am I excited to work on this? Ask those deeper questions to you before and over again, and that helps. So when you move to another field, or you're deciding between two fields, always ask this question: more than your competency, am I excited enough to do something? Or essentially, are you curious enough to do something?
Basically, so now we have, I have a question. So now we have 8 people who have built multiple businesses and ventures over the past, right? So want to understand, like, if you have an idea, right? Now what? A lot of people have idea. Everyone is a genius, but what happens when tire hits the road? Like, how to check if the tire is going to survive, or if the tire is built from the right material, right quality, if it's there for the right market. So basically, how do you validate an idea, and how do you make sure that you're going to make a business out of it? So since we have done multiple things in the past, we know, we can share from our experience. So yeah, Chirag, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. If I have an idea and I want to execute it first, I will quickly go and talk to the people who will buy my product or my service, and I would just live with them, spend time with them, probably get into a relationship with them, and just try to explore on why they will buy my product, how they will buy my product, what they will use my product for, when they will use my product for, and I would essentially build a mental model of importance versus frequency. That is, how frequently would they use my product or service, and how important it is in their life to use my product or the service, and based on that, I would essentially check the price they would pay for it. That is the only thing I would focus on, probably for as long as I can, unless I have clear answers. And then I would try to fit into my framework of highest ARPU, highest gross margin, net margin, and lowest CAC. Anyone else who has some thoughts about it?
Sure. I mean, we've done our fair share of MVP, which is minimum viable product, like you, to test out your core value proposition with a rough product, if not the exact product that you want to build. I mean, we've done a lot of it at Leaf, but I still stay to be the biggest fan of the way Dunzo sort of validated their idea. I read it somewhere that they used to make WhatsApp groups with the delivery boy of the person who was doing that A to B movement of goods. I think it is just kick-ass, and for the longest time, I think till their good Series A funding or sorts, they were doing that, which is fucking fantastic, right? You use the existing infrastructure to test out the real value proposition. The real value proposition is not an app that moves things from A to B. The real value proposition is moving things from A to B. So test that out. Pricing, etc., everything can be figured out. But I think if there is user love, if there is user obsession, and you test these things out in the value proposition that you thought of, using the existing infrastructure, I think it's a win. It's a winner. You just test that bit out. That would be a good way to start, according to me.
Essentially, there is two things which I would add to this. Whenever you have an idea, right, it's got a 100% chance of failure. Everything starts with a 100% chance of failure or 0% chance of success. So taking it from a 100% chance of failure, because I like to reduce my like or increase, right? Like, fuck it.
Did you just say 100% chance of failure? Why the fuck? That is so demotivating, Manik, for everyone who is watching this.
But come to think of it, right? Like 99% of the startups actually end up failing. So that's where I'm coming in from. So each moment or each step you have to analyze, how do you improve your survivability in the market, be in terms of resource gathering, that is employees you have, money you can raise, things which you can get done. or in terms of validation to what you have. I don't even believe that MVP is always needed. Sometimes it's just sales needed, because if everyone can believe that you and your team can build a great product, imagine you are like 4 guys who have done their PhD from Stanford and are coming together to build a product. Everyone will believe you can build the product if you have already done your PhD and thesis in a certain field. So can you essentially sell is the question that will come. So that will reduce your chances of failure, because you don't have a sales expertise in your team. If your expertise in the team is to be, someone who's coming in from a growth marketing perspective, who's been a growth hacker all his life, can really sell well, who's done an MBA, can understand those finances, those metrics, and he's saying he's going to build a tech product, then the product becomes an expertise to be filled out to. Essentially, you have a list of different things which a company needs to do really well, and founders have a particular core skill set that they can do something extremely well. Most investors will believe that you can do one particular thing really well, and the skill set which you don't have, or something which you don't have a previous metric to show that you can do well, is being looked as a chance of failure. So how do you judge that becomes extremely important. For tech founders, it's extremely important to have sales to show it to your people. So I would rather have them focusing on a website or a landing page or whatever, right? Like even a Notion doc which has like 10 customer profiles who can say, hey, we need this. That would be important. For a salesperson or someone who can really sell well, it would be extremely important. How do you come across build products? How do your product building or a roadmap or the early designs look like? So this is what my idea is. At each moment, you're just increasing your chances of success. And how do you do that? And understanding yourself and your team is the first step. Then is the next step of, do I want to build an MVP? And from an MVP perspective, I think everyone should read this. There was a blog post by Superhuman guys on how they figured out PMF. I think it was one of the favorite posts which I have read on how they looked at, finding essential early traction of people who loved their product and how they went deep into it. It's a beautiful post. I think Rahul Vora, the founder, wrote it.
So, does anyone else have any inputs on this MVP?
On MVP, I have a take before any person moves on to MVP. So basically, you need to understand like how big is the market, how big the market is going to be for your product. So basically, coming from the experience in my first startup, what I built, the market was not big enough for that. So believe me that you are going to, you have to like believe in the fact that you're going to spend 3 to 5 years of your life on a business, building that product or the service for the people you intend to sell to. So you need to understand how big is going to the market, either how big is the market currently or the potential of increasing, of becoming a big market backed by data. So you need to understand how this is called total addressable market, like where all you can sell the product, where all you can sell the services, what all you can do. So you need to understand your addressable market and then move on to the MVP part. So MVP and addressable market is something that I think one should validate before moving on to the pursuit of the idea.
Yeah, Saransh, you had something to say about it.
Just one quick point here. I think we have kind of moved away from the concept of little bit away from MVP of minimum viable product. And like what Paras talked about Dunzo, how they execute it. So it's more of an MVE now, which is minimum viable execution that you can do to quickly check your hypothesis. And product is something I think we primarily go into when we want to, let's be honest, right, raise funds about it, and kind of want to start showing that's a scalable business, right? MVE is something which Misho did, right? They just built WhatsApp groups to kind of execute it. That's what Dunzo did. So that I think just wanted to build that context that even people who do not have any coding experience, do not have any tech experience or product experience, can actually try out existing platforms, try and execute what their hypothesis, and if this works, then they can always hire folks to kind of build that up, or no code platforms exist now. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Fantastic, guys. So before we end, I have a quick question from all of you. So I was thinking, should we invite a guest on our podcast for episode 3? So any recommendations? Which industry would you want the person to be from? So cool. Also for the audience, if you want to see someone on our podcast, please send in the recommendations in the comment section below, and you can also let us know. So we will try our best. Since the Synapse is an open group, we would love to have new people join us in these stimulating conversations. Okay, that's all for this week. Thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe. Bye.
Bye guys. Take care.
Bye.